I wasn't expecting a knock today. Father's Day used to be loud and smoky, with half-promises floating over the grill. Now the only sound is the clock scraping the air. Dad? Lydia's voice. I open the door. She stands in the hall with a smile and a small box wrapped in pale blue paper. A white ribbon clings to the corners. You look well, she says. I've had quieter years, I answer. Come in? I can't. She glances over her shoulder like her courage stayed in the elevator. Happy Father's Day. You found me. I always knew. She presses the box into my hands. Please don't be upset. I'm not upset, I say, and we both hear the lie. Her eyes circle my face, counting what the years cost. I have to go. Stay a minute, Lydia. I can't. Not today, she lowers her voice. Don't say anything stupid out loud. Okay. She tries to smile and turns away. The hallway swallows her. I close the door and set the box on the table. It's heavier than it looks. The ribbon bites my thumb. My phone rings. Eleanor's name flashes like a flare. I answer. Eleanor, don't open it. Her voice is tight, clipped, as if she's speaking through a keyhole. Promise me. What is it? Promise me. I let the silence stand between us. I promise. She exhales, not relief, more like a wire hitting water. Good. Is she with you? No. Did you send her? No. I told her not to go. Then softer. I told her a lot of things. You called me after 15 years to warn me about a gift? I called because I know you, she says. Curious. Proud. Too honest when you think you're alone. I am alone. That's the problem. Don't open it. Don't talk near it. Put it in a drawer and wait for me. Wait for what? For the rest. The line goes dead. My apartment returns, small and serious. I carry the box to the window. Outside, the street is Sunday empty. A bus whispering by, a man walking his old dog. I tilt the box. Something shifts inside with a fine mechanical sigh. Don't say anything stupid out loud, Lydia said. Anger would be easy. Relief would be easier. What I feel is the old ache opening like a door I never fixed. 15 years since I walked out of the house I built, leaving my tools lined like teeth. 15 years since the papers touched the table. Since Eleanor's eyes slid past mine. Since Lydia stood behind her mother like a witness. Sign here, Charles had said back then, the ink already wet. It's for protection. Protection from what? I asked. From your mistakes. Today the box watches me. I pour tea and don't drink it. I pick up the box and put it down. I circle the table like a man guarding the small bomb. Another call. Unknown number. I let it ring. It stops. Starts again. I answer on the fourth ring. Happy Father's Day, a man says. Who is this? An old friend. I don't have many of those. Then you're not a friend. He chuckles. Open the gift. I'm not opening anything. Then keep it close. Precious things wander. The line goes dead. I carry the box to the sink. I think of water, pipes, rust. I think of how a trap can look like a favor. I think of Lydia's eyes, hopeful and guilty at once. I speak to the empty room. If this is what I think it is, you chose the wrong day. Steam fogs the window and fades. My hands stop shaking. I step into the old part of myself, the man who measured twice and cut once, who could tell by the weight of a tool if someone had touched it. I slide the box into a drawer and close it gently. I stretch masking tape over the seam and sign my name across the tape with a slow hand. Proof against second thoughts. You don't get to control my voice anymore, I whisper. Another knock, 3 quick taps. My heartbeat moves to my throat. Who is it? Down the hall, a woman says. Package mix-up. I open on the chain. A stranger holds a padded envelope. Her smile is kind. Wrong floor, she says. It happens, I answer, taking it. She glances past me. Pretty ribbon. Birthday, I lie. Good for you. She nods and leaves, footsteps soft. I lock the door and hold the envelope like smoke. I do not open this one either. I write return to sender in heavy letters and set it by the door. My phone buzzes. A photo of my door arrives from an unknown number. The ribbon is visible through the glass. Who are you? I type. 3 dots. Then, a father should open his daughter's gifts. I reply, a father should keep his daughter safe. No response. I sit and drink the tea. It's cold, but cold keeps you awake. I look at the drawer. I think of Lydia at my door, voice small, hands careful. I think of Eleanor telling me to wait. The clock scrapes another minute off the day. I fold my hands and speak softly, to myself or to whoever is listening. Fine. I'll wait. But when the door opens next time, I won't be the one surprised. I should have left sooner, but that night ripped the handle off the door and shoved me through. The house smelled like lemon polish and fear. Somewhere a printer woke. Where were you? Eleanor waited at the stairs, arms folded. We had a board call. Fixing the delivery truck, I said. Brake fluid leak. Safety matters. Charles raised a glass in the dining room. Finally. Let's make this clean. Make what clean? Eleanor slid a stack of papers across the table. Temporary restructuring. Protection. Protection from what? From you, Charles said, smiling like a locksmith. No offense. You ignore counsel. You create risk. I keep the lights on. He tapped the pages. Transfer voting rights for a year. Stabilize operations. Revisit after the audit. A year? I touched the top sheet. The notary stamp looked new. The clerk's name rang wrong. Why is Lydia's name here? Eleanor didn't answer. Why is our 17-year-old listed as proxy? She's 18 next month, Charles said. Close enough. Close enough to be used, I said. Footsteps on the stairs. Lydia stopped on the last step, eyes swollen. I only signed what Mom told me to. You signed? She nodded. Uncle Charles said it protects the company. He said if you love us, you'll agree. I love you, I said. That's why I built this. Eleanor slid a pen toward me. Sign, John. Sleep. Tomorrow we'll talk. This isn't talk. It's an ambush. It's a safeguard, she said. It's a theft, I answered. Charles tapped the last page. We already filed a notice. This aligns the signature, not with my hand. He leaned back. Look, old man. The bank wants certainty. Handshakes don't stop subpoenas. I do, I turned to Lydia. Did you read them? She swallowed. I tried. Tell her, I said to Eleanor. Tell her what it does. It lets me protect what you built, Eleanor said. From you. How? By consolidating decisions until the audit's done. And the shares? Held in trust. Whose trust? Eleanor's eyes slid to Charles. My trust, he said. Neutral. Neutral like gasoline, I said. Rain began, quick and hard. Mom says you're reckless, Lydia whispered. You'd risk everything because you think you can fix it alone. I fix things because no one else shows up when they break, I said. Eleanor touched her shoulder. Go upstairs, honey. Lydia stayed. Dad, sign it for a month, please. For a month? I read the last page. There's no end date. It's revocable, Charles said. At our discretion. Our, I repeated. Lightning bleached the room. Remember the winter the roof caved? I asked. You passed tools, Elle. You said, we're a team. We are, she said, eyes wet. Then why am I the only one tied to the rope? Charles set down his glass. Enough nostalgia. We file tonight with your signature, or we file another way. Another way? Durable power of attorney, he said. Signed last week. That's a lie. He slid a photocopy. My signature stared back, smooth where mine is jagged. I looked at Eleanor. Tell me you didn't. It's reversible, she said. We were buying time. You were stealing it. Lydia grabbed my sleeve. Dad, don't yell. I'm not, I said lower. If they take the shares in your name, they take your future. This doesn't protect you. It puts you in his pocket. He smiled. In my care. In your fist, I said. We stood there, 4 people in a storm, pretending it was business. Please, Eleanor whispered, just sign. On one condition, I said, independent counsel for Lydia. Tomorrow, her own lawyer. She doesn't need, Charles began. She needs to know, I said. Lydia squeezed my arm. If I do that, will you sign for a week? A week with an end date. In writing, Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. Fine. Charles spread his hands. Adults. Progress. I picked up the pen. The room leaned in. Rain thickened. The printer hummed. I set the pen down. No. Eleanor's face hardened. John. Look at the notary seal, I said. Clerk's name is Joanna Pike. She retired last year. There are 2 Pikes, Charles said. There aren't? I slid the page back. If this is how you start, I know how it ends. Walk away then, he said. By dawn, the filings are in. You file those and you'll see me in court with a forged seal and a fake POA. You can't afford that fight. Maybe not, I said. But truth loves the long road. Eleanor's voice cracked. Don't do this. I looked at Lydia. I love you. I won't sign a lie to make you comfortable in a trap. Dad, I'm leaving before I say something I can't take back. I turned toward the door. Her hand slipped from my sleeve. At the threshold, I paused. Check the bottom drawer of the study desk. Charles frowned. Why? Because that's where the spare key used to be. I smiled without warmth. Not anymore. I stepped into the rain. It felt mean on my face. I started the truck. Wipers carved arcs. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Thanks for signing. Copy printing now. I looked back at the window. The printer chewed paper like a hungry mouth. On the top sheet was my name. Bolder, smoother, perfect. They didn't need my hand anymore. I put the truck in gear and told the night, you'll hear from me when the ink dries on the truth. 15 years of silence teaches you which voices echo and which ones fade. Mine faded from their dinner table, but it never stopped moving quietly through the walls they thought were solid. I didn't run. I withdrew like a man pulling back a loaded spring. John, you sure about this? Martin asked, flipping through my folders. Positive, I said. No lawsuits. No headlines. Just time. You're not the waiting type. I wasn't, I answered. But storms don't chase every thief. Some just wait for the roof to rot. I rented a small house near the coast. Bare floors, quiet nights, no boardrooms. I took every tool they thought I'd lost. Knowledge, signatures, leverage. I invested quietly in small companies, flipped land that Charles ignored, built slow capital. When the first checks cleared, I called a lawyer in Austin. John, she said, if you're serious, you need paper trails. Real ones. I already started. For years I traced their shadows like a hunter reading broken twigs. Charles loved shortcuts. The company ballooned under his guidance. He refinanced the old warehouses twice in 3 years. He shifted equity into shell corporations named after dead relatives. I didn't interfere. I documented. One night, 7 years in, I sat at my kitchen table with tax records spread like cards. Martin poured coffee. Tell me what you see, I said. He leaned over the papers. He's laundering through the trusts, using Lydia's proxy shares as collateral. She became a lawyer, I said. He made sure she joined his firm right after graduation. Martin frowned. She's in this? Maybe not willingly. You still trust her? I didn't answer. Flashback. Lydia at 17. Dad, it's just paperwork. Uncle Charles says it's normal. Normal for wolves, I'd said. She'd rolled her eyes like teenagers do, but she'd signed. Back in the present, I followed her career from afar. Bar admissions, speeches, case records. She argued property disputes like someone raised on legal loopholes. Charles's firm listed her as senior counsel before her 3rd year. That wasn't mentorship. That was control. Every year, I sent anonymous tips to a financial watchdog group. Never enough to trigger alarms, just enough to keep pressure simmering. I wanted the cracks to form naturally. 10 years in, Charles made his boldest move. He bought the riverfront, Martin asked, staring at the newspaper. Leased it through a holding company, I corrected, using trust money. Illegal? Questionable, I said, but not illegal yet. Why not bring him down now? Because people don't believe in ghosts until they feel the cold breath on their neck. I started attending local charity events, not as myself, but under a foundation name. I wore different suits, changed my grooming, kept my distance. From across banquet halls, I watched Charles aging into arrogance. Lydia stood beside him, her smile sharp, but her eyes tired. She gave speeches about legacy. He shook hands like a king, blessing his subjects. Eleanor never appeared. I recorded everything. Once, at a legal seminar, Lydia stood 3 rows away. She didn't recognize me, or maybe she did and chose not to. Her voice was confident, but when Charles entered, her shoulders tightened like an old habit. She's not the same girl, Martin said afterward. No, I answered. She's the woman built on the lie I walked away from. Over the years, my walls filled with labeled binders, loans, property transfers, corporate filings, each document a puzzle piece. I found shell accounts registered in the Cayman Islands under companies named Pike Holdings and EL Estates. Pike was the fake notary on my forged papers. He wasn't subtle, he was predictable. I hired a forensic accountant once. She called me back 2 weeks later. Whoever this is, she said, they're either brilliant or reckless. Both, I said, and I want every reckless move dated and cataloged. Year 12. Lydia won an award for Rising Legal Star. I watched the broadcast online. Her speech thanked Charles for believing in her when others walked away. I turned off the screen. She's gone, Martin said softly. Or she's buried, I replied. Sometimes those are the same. 2 years later, I received a thick envelope with no return address. Inside were photocopies of corporate minutes, trust amendments, and one handwritten note. He's moving everything into one vehicle. Watch the merger filings. The handwriting was familiar. Lydia's. Martin whistled. She's either scared or smart. Maybe both, I said. I traced the filings. Charles planned to consolidate the family business, the trusts, and the proxy shares into a single structure, controlled by his signature and one silent beneficiary. If he pulled it off, he'd own everything legally, wiping out any claim I might resurrect. He scheduled the merger for Father's Day. I almost laughed. Of course he did. For 15 years, I let my anger harden into strategy. I didn't call Eleanor. I didn't confront Lydia. I didn't chase Charles with lawsuits. I became the thing they feared most, quiet. Because quiet doesn't mean gone. It means calculating. Martin asked me one last time, when will you act? When they believe they've already won, I said. The right moment isn't when the walls are weakest. It's when the thieves have started decorating them. I closed the final binder and slid it into the safe. On the spine was the date I walked out 15 years ago. Under it, in smaller letters, for when the clock strikes. Because revenge isn't rage, it's timing. And my clock was almost done ticking. The box sat on my table like a small animal that might bite. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I listened to the silence until I heard my own blood. Happy Father's Day, I told it, just to steady my voice. I put on my coat, slid the box into a grocery bag, and left the apartment. The hallway smelled like bleach. Outside, the evening wind scraped the trees. Martin opened before I knocked. You only come with ghosts. I brought one. He eyed the bag. Blue ribbon, white corners. From Lydia. He waved me in. His kitchen was labeled and calm. Truth fast or kind? Fast. He pulled on gloves. Phone in the bread tin. Airplane mode. Paranoid? Alive, he said. Alive looks paranoid. I killed my signal and dropped the phone. Martin lifted the box like a relic and studied the ribbon. What? It's been retied. See the kink? She didn't wrap it herself. She looked nervous. Maybe for good reason. He sliced the paper, lifted the lid. Velvet glowed. The center bulged. False floor, he murmured, tapping. He slipped a razor along the seam and peeled the lining. A coin of black plastic blinked a sliver of red. Bug, he said. Active. Likely a SIM mic. Some wake when you talk someone wanted me to monologue. Alone, or say a name, he said. Confessions like quiet rooms. He turned it with tweezers. Tape residue. This wrote something else before the gift. Could it track me? If it's dual use, either way, don't kill it. Off looks like a story ending to whoever's listening. He pointed high. Cookie tin. Faraday enough. He dropped the device in the tin and sealed the lid. The red wink still glowed under metal. We stared at it. 2 old men and a cookie coffin. Charles, he asked. First guess. Second? Lydia, I said, and it tasted like metal. You want her clean, he said. I want her free. Both can't be true in his firm. I sat. The chair admitted a tired groan. 15 years, and the first thing she brings me is a trap. Maybe it's also a key. How? People forced to do bad things leave fingerprints of mercy, a retied ribbon, a warning call. He reassembled the box and taped the seams. Chain of custody. If this goes to court, no one claims you tampered. I'm not ready for court. You're in it, he said. The courtroom is just a room. Memory pulled me backward. Rain on the roof. The forged seal. The printer chewing my name. I steadied. They want me angry, I said. Angry men talk too much. Then be winter, Martin said. Cold is clean. My phone buzzed in the bread tin. Speaker, I said. We answered. A smooth male voice. Enjoying your present? Who is this? A friend of the family. We'd love to hear your thoughts. My thoughts? I kept my mouth away from the mic. People who hide behind gifts are cowards. Big word for a mechanic. Big mouth for a clerk, he chuckled. Tell Lydia hello. He hung up. Clerk? Martin asked. Notary, I said. Pike. The forged seal. You think he's still theirs? He never left. Martin cracked the cookie tin and spoke into the thin crack. Tell the truth, John. For the record, I understood. I faced the table. I never signed those documents, I said, even and slow. They forged my name and coerced a miner's proxy. I have evidence of shell transfers and trust abuse. He shut the lid. Let them carry that home. You think they'll use it? Rushing makes men stupid, he said. Let's make them hurry. I paced. If Lydia planted it, why warn me? Why tell me not to say anything stupid out loud? Because she's still their witness, he said, and still your daughter. What now? Now we feed the fish. We give them something true, something they think they own, and something they can't resist. Then we find the hand behind the hand. He set the bug on the counter and tuned his old radio between stations until the static sounded like rain. He spoke conversationally. You hear that, boys? The man says he never signed, I added calm. The man has copies of your neutral trust. The man knows EL Estates. The man knows Pike Holdings. The man knows your merger date. Martin slid the device back into the tin and wrapped it in a towel. Time to measure the tug, he said. How? We put the box back where you left it. We talk weather near it. We watch who bites. Trap the trap? Exactly. He handed me a prepaid phone. New number. No names. Code for Lydia? No code, he said. If she's clean enough to help, she'll find you. If she's not, code words won't save you. We drove to my building through a patient rain. On the stairs, a man in a delivery jacket passed us empty-handed and smiling too hard. Inside, I set the box on the table like a ritual and straightened the ribbon. Martin placed a sliver of tape on the drawer seam, his whisper-thin tell. Talk near it, he said from the window's shadow. Only weather and tea. I boiled water. Looks like rain tomorrow. Maybe Tuesday. We let the room fill with small talk. Across the hall, a door opened, lingered, shut. The building breathed. At 9, the prepaid buzzed. Unknown. Did you like the surprise? I typed. I like honest paper better. 3 dots. Then, bring the box to the office at 10. We will explain. Office? Martin asked. Charles or his lawyer. Either way, he said. They're scared enough to be brave. I set the kettle down and watched steam thin out. My anger sat beside me like a student waiting to be called. I'll bring the box, I said. And the part of me they forgot. Which part? The one that doesn't break when someone says I'm alone. The prepaid buzzed again. Come alone. I looked at the tape drawer and the soft blue ribbon. I typed one word. Okay. Martin's eyes warned me. You won't go alone. I will arrive alone, I said. There's a difference. He nodded. Then plan the room. We'll need sight lines, a second exit, and noise we control. I pointed at the gift. And their ear. He smiled thinly. I'll be nearby. Cold is clean, remember. We killed the lights. The apartment held its breath. In the dark, the cookie tin pulsed like a patient heart. I leaned close enough for the device to taste my breath. Tomorrow you hear my voice, I whispered. But tomorrow, you'll hear your own louder. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, touching the edge of my beard the way a thief checks a lock. 15 years had turned my face into something they'd look at twice, but never truly see. That was the plan. Mr. Turner, the receptionist said as I stepped into the building. The alias slid off her tongue like it had always belonged to me. The investor's lunch is on the 2nd floor. Mr. Turner, a man with clean papers, old money, and no history. Martin adjusted my tie in the car earlier. They won't recognize the eyes if the story fits the suit, he said. They taught me that, I replied. You're not just visiting. You're scouting a battlefield. I walked into the conference room where Charles and Lydia held court. Charles looked older but not wiser. His hair was thinner, his smile wider. Lydia stood near the projector, shoulders squared, voice smooth. She carried herself like someone who learned to lead under pressure. But when Charles leaned close to whisper something, her fingers tightened around the clicker, a small flicker. But I saw it. Mr. Turner, Charles said, shaking my hand. Pleasure to meet you. Anonymous investors are my favorite kind. Keeps things exciting. I'm only anonymous until the numbers make sense, I replied. He laughed too loud, the kind of laugh that hides nerves. Lydia will walk you through the company's structure. She's our sharpest mind. She turned to me. We pride ourselves on clean growth and transparent partnerships. Her tone was confident, but her eyes flicked to Charles before every key point. Good, I said. I like transparency. Makes lies easier to spot. She paused. Excuse me? I smiled. Financial lies. Everyone has them. A ripple of polite laughter moved through the room. Charles didn't laugh. He watched me. As Lydia outlined their expansion, I noted every word. The same properties I once managed were listed as legacy acquisitions. The riverfront lease he'd hidden through shell companies was now packaged as a clean, profitable deal. He'd wrapped every stolen brick in new paper. Impressive, I said, leaning forward. You've grown fast. Charles grinned. Vision, Mr. Turner. We don't wait around for the past to catch up smart, I said. The past can be inconvenient. He tilted his head, curious. You sound like a man who knows. I do. After the presentation, Charles cornered me near the window. We value discretion, Mr. Turner. Investors who ask too many questions tend to make partners nervous. I ask the right questions, I said, the kind that keep people honest. He narrowed his eyes, searching for a hint of recognition. Nothing. I'd shaved the old man down to a ghost. Lydia, he called, pulling her into the conversation. Show Mr. Turner the new trust structure. She opened a folder. My stomach tightened when I saw the names. E.L. Estates. Pike Holdings. My ghosts, printed in clean fonts. You built these trusts yourself? I asked her. She nodded. I've handled most of the legal restructuring. Uncle Charles oversees strategy. I handle the compliance. And your father? The question slipped like a knife between ribs. Her face froze for a fraction of a second. My father doesn't involve himself in this company. Charles clapped her shoulder. He left. Years ago, we don't talk about ghosts. I smiled. Ghosts have a habit of walking back in when people least expect it. Lydia forced a laugh. Let's focus on the present. Later, at a smaller investor dinner, I watched them interact more naturally. Lydia spoke sharply to a board member who questioned a policy. She wasn't the quiet girl hiding behind Eleanor anymore. She was their lawyer, their shield. But every time Charles interrupted her, she lowered her voice and stepped back half an inch. Controlled, trained, a man with a drink leaned toward me. First time investing with them? Something like that, I said. Watch Charles, he whispered. Everything he touches looks gold until you scratch it. I turned to him. And Lydia? She's the reason this house hasn't collapsed. That night, in my hotel room, I replayed every gesture. Lydia was polished, but her eyes told a story of pressure. She wasn't fully his accomplice. She was his structure. 2 weeks into my investor routine, I was invited to a private board meeting. Martin warned me beforehand. They'll test you, he said. Push your story until they find cracks. They built those cracks in me, I replied. They just don't know I sealed them shut. Charles opened the meeting with a grin. Mr. Turner, we'd like to offer you early access to some of our more sensitive holdings. Strict confidentiality, of course, I said. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a list of offshore accounts tied to new shell companies. Different names, same tricks. He wasn't even being careful anymore. He thought he owned the narrative. You're trusting me fast, I said. You look like a man who understands power, Charles replied. Lydia interjected quietly. We should at least run due diligence, Uncle. It's protocol, Charles waved her off. He's fine. I know men like him, I leaned back. I know men like you too. He stared. Lydia looked down, fiddling with a pen. As the meeting ended, Lydia caught me in the hallway. Mr. Turner, she said softly, why are you really here? What do you mean? You ask the kind of questions my father used to ask. I held her gaze. Maybe I'm just thorough. She frowned. He was thorough too, and stubborn. It ruined everything. Her voice cracked slightly on everything. She caught herself, straightened. Good night, Mr. Turner. I watched her walk away, shoulders tight. That flicker of unease around Charles, it wasn't paranoia. It was history. Back in the hotel, I peeled off the suit and stared at my reflection. Mr. Turner was working. They hadn't recognized me yet, but Lydia was starting to feel something. The game had entered its quiet middle phase. They thought I was sniffing for profit. I was sniffing for blood in their paperwork. Charles had grown careless. Lydia had grown powerful but uncertain, and I had grown patient. This town hadn't changed, but I had. I whispered to the mirror, "You won't see me coming until you're already in the trap." They say cracks don't appear all at once. First the paint blisters, then the plaster shifts. By the time anyone hears the wall groan, the foundation's already splitting. That night, I sat at the far end of the board dinner table, wearing the suit of a man named Mr. Turner, the invisible investor. Charles sat at the head like a king who thought his castle was still whole. Lydia sat to his right, her expression polished, but her fingers tapped a rhythm against her wineglass. That rhythm didn't belong to a woman at ease. It belonged to someone counting seconds. Charles raised his voice. "The auditors are stalling. You told me they'd sign off by last quarter." Lydia didn't flinch. "They needed more disclosures. We can't push them without raising flags." "Flags?" Charles leaned closer. "Lydia, there's nothing to hide, right?" She met his stare for a moment, and then looked down. Not from them. The room shifted. A few board members glanced at each other. I sipped my drink, watching. He was squeezing her, and she was holding her breath. A man on the board spoke up. "If the audit fails, our investors will scatter." Charles smiled tightly. "The audit won't fail. Lydia will handle it." Her jaw clenched. "I already am." "Then do it faster." Her voice lowered. "That's not how legal timelines work." "Then bend them." I leaned forward casually. "Sounds like pressure." Charles turned to me. "Business moves at the speed of confidence, Mr. Turner. We can't let outsiders think we're weak." I smiled. "Confidence is good. But cracks, they spread fast if you paint over them." Lydia's eyes snapped toward me. For half a heartbeat, something flickered. Recognition? Number. Something softer. A memory she couldn't quite name. I started feeding quiet questions to my journalist friend 2 weeks earlier. Nothing loud. Just enough to make regulators shuffle their papers and ask for one more file. Enough to make Charles feel the walls tightening. "Anonymous tip about irregular trust activity," she'd said on the phone. "You sure you want me to poke this nest?" "Just lightly," I answered. "Enough to make the hornets restless." Restless hornets sting. Only if they know where to aim. As the dinner dragged on, Eleanor's absence sat heavier than the chandelier light. She hadn't attended a single event since my return. No statements, no appearances. Like a queen retreating to her tower when the war begins. I caught Lydia staring at an empty chair once. Her face softened, almost childlike, before she caught herself. The mask snapped back on. After dessert, Charles cornered Lydia near the wine cart. I pretended to take a call, lingering close enough to hear. "Why haven't you shut down those inquiries?" he hissed. "I've done what I can," she whispered back. "If we push harder, it'll look like we're hiding something." "Because we are," he snapped. She froze. He realized it too late. "I mean, strategically," he added, smoothing his tone. "You know what I mean." She didn't answer. She just nodded and walked away, shoulders stiff. Later that week, I saw her in a place she hadn't been in years, the porch of the old house. She stood there after dark, coat wrapped tight, staring at the wood like it might speak back. That porch was where we'd shared everything. It was where I taught her to listen to rain, to fix a loose nail, to tell the truth even when it burned. I watched from across the street, half hidden under a street lamp. She sat on the steps, took off her gloves, and ran her fingers over the groove I carved into the railing the day she was born. LD plus DAD in uneven letters. She traced it slowly, like she was looking for something buried inside it. "Looking for ghosts, Lydia?" I whispered to myself. She pulled out her phone, stared at the screen, then put it away. She didn't call anyone. She just sat there in silence, as if waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. Martin called me the next morning. "Pressure's working. Your journalist friend got a nibble. The audit team wants to interview board members separately." "Good," I said. "Separate rooms make liars nervous." "And Lydia? She's cracking." He was quiet for a moment. "You sound almost conflicted." "I'm not," I said too fast. "She made her choices." "Yeah." At 17, his words stuck like splinters. But this wasn't the time to bleed. At the next board prep meeting, I pushed a quiet question to the table. How prepared are you for external interviews? Charles smirked. We've got nothing to hide. Lydia shot him a look. We should prepare statements. He waved her off. If we act guilty, they'll smell blood. Not acting isn't the same as being clean, she said sharply. He leaned close to her. You're not doubting me, are you? Her voice lowered. I'm doubting your memory. The room froze. She gathered her files and walked out before anyone could react. Charles laughed nervously. Stress. Lawyers, I smiled. Stress reveals truth. That night, my journalist friend sent me a short message. Audit lead requested personal meeting with Lydia. Alone. She hesitated before accepting. I read the text 3 times. She hesitated. That meant something was pulling at her. Guilt, fear, or maybe memory. I drove past the house again a few nights later. She was on the porch again, hood up, hands in her pockets. But this time, she wasn't tracing the railing. She was staring across the street, right where I was parked. For a second, her eyes narrowed, scanning the shadows. I held my breath. She tilted her head slightly, like she felt something familiar, but then shook it off and walked inside. The facade was cracking. Charles barked louder at meetings. Lydia pushed back more. Eleanor hid deeper, and quietly I kept loosening the screws, one by one. This wasn't chaos. This was control. And control is about timing. Soon they wouldn't just feel me in the shadows. They'd hear my footsteps inside their walls. The invitation slid under my hotel door like a dare. Annual Founders Gala. Black tie required. 15 years since I'd stood beneath those chandeliers. 15 years since they buried my name under forged signatures and polite lies. This time I wasn't walking in as John. I was walking in as Mr. Turner, the anonymous investor they'd been courting for months. And tonight, the mask would come off. Martin adjusted my cufflinks in the car. You're sure you want the reveal tonight? Charles is too confident, I said. He thinks he owns the stage. I'm about to take the floor out from under him. And Lydia, she's already cracking. Tonight, she'll either stand with him or fall with him. He gave a low whistle. Cold. Strategic. It's the only language they respect. The ballroom hadn't changed. Gold drapes. Crystal lights. The same portraits of men who thought their signatures would outlive their sins. I stepped through the doors and felt every head turn toward the stranger they'd been hearing about. The investor who could save them. Charles spotted me first, striding over in his tailored suit. His grin was wide, performative. Mr. Turner, you made it. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. He clapped my shoulder. Tonight, you'll see why this company's future is brighter than ever. I'm sure, I said, though sometimes the past likes to visit uninvited. His smile faltered for half a second, then returned. You have a way with words. Lydia approached next. Her gown was elegant, her posture perfect, but her eyes betrayed her. She couldn't look at me for more than 2 seconds without glancing away. Mr. Turner, she said carefully, I'm glad you came. I wouldn't have missed this, I replied, my voice low. I hear it's a night for legacy. Her throat tightened. You've been asking questions. Dangerous ones. Truth usually is, I said. She lowered her voice. Whatever you think you're doing, be careful. I held her gaze until she looked away. I always am. Eleanor sat at a corner table, away from the lights, pale, thinner than I remembered. Her hands clutched her purse like a lifeline. When our eyes met, she didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stared. There was guilt there, but also something sharper. Fear. Charles took the stage to thunderous applause. He loved this part. Tonight, he began, we celebrate legacy. We honor those who built this company from nothing and carried it into the future. We honor our family, our partners, our loyal investors. He gestured toward me. And we welcome new visionaries who will join us in shaping what's to come. The spotlight swung toward my table. Conversations hushed. Lydia shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor's eyes widened. Charles continued, Mr. Turner represents a strategic expansion. I rose slowly, cutting him off. Actually, I think it's time I introduce myself properly. A ripple moved through the crowd. Charles froze mid-sentence. I walked toward the stage, every step measured. Lydia's hand tightened around her wineglass. Eleanor's lips parted, whispering something only she could hear. Good evening, I said into the microphone. My name isn't Mr. Turner. A murmur swept across the ballroom. My name is John. The room fell silent. Every board member shifted. Charles blinked, his mouth opening but no words forming. Lydia looked like she'd been punched. Eleanor covered her mouth. I smiled faintly. It's been a long time since I stood in this room. 15 years, to be exact. A lot has changed. New trusts, new shell companies, new stories. Charles recovered quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is unexpected. John here, he's a former partner. A man who... I raised a hand. A man who built this company from the ground up, only to have it taken through forged signatures, manipulated proxies, and betrayal, dressed as protection. Gasps echoed. Cameras from journalists in the back began to rise. I turned toward Lydia. You were young. I don't blame you for believing them. She looked away. I faced Charles. But you knew exactly what you were doing. Charles laughed nervously. These are wild accusations. I think our guest has had too much. I pulled a small remote from my pocket and clicked. A screen behind us lit up, displaying trust documents, shell company charts, and emails. This, I said calmly, is your legacy. A board member stood. Charles, is this real? Of course not, Charles snapped. This is a stunt. He's desperate. I clicked again. An audio recording played. Charles's own voice bragging to a partner about locking everything down before the old man figures it out. Lydia's eyes widened. You said that wasn't real. Charles turned to her. Lydia, don't... You lied to me, she shouted, her voice echoing through the hall. The crowd erupted. Eleanor stood slowly, pale as paper. This isn't about revenge, I said into the mic. It's about truth. And tonight, the truth finally gets a seat at the table. I looked directly at Charles. You spent 15 years building walls to keep me out. But you built those walls on lies, and lies don't hold forever. Charles lunged for the microphone, but Lydia stepped in front of him. For the first time, she wasn't his lawyer or his shield. She was something else, angry, betrayed, and awake. Sit down, she hissed. I'm done covering for you. The room fell into stunned silence. Charles stared at her, then at me. Something shifted behind his eyes. A cornered man realizing the stage isn't his anymore. I leaned toward him, voice low enough for only him to hear. Welcome to the trap, the board members started whispering to each other, eyes darting between documents on the screen and Charles's pale face. Eleanor clutched her chest like the past had finally caught up to her. Lydia's hands were trembling, but she didn't look away this time, and I stood at the center of it all, calm, steady, watching the cracks spread faster than he could patch them. The legacy he stole was finally burning, and everyone was watching. The lights were hot on my face, but the room was ice cold. Hundreds of eyes stared at me, waiting to understand why the anonymous investor had just walked onto their stage in the middle of the gala. My hand gripped the microphone. You've heard a lot about legacy tonight, I began, my voice trembling just enough for them to smell truth. But legacies aren't built by speeches. They're built by actions, and sometimes by lies. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Charles shifted at his table, forcing a grin, waving to the tech crew like this was some kind of stunt. Lydia sat still, eyes wide, knuckles white around her glass. Eleanor looked like she was shrinking into the shadows. Charles stood up. John, this isn't the time. Sit down, Charles, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. It's exactly the time. I nodded to Martin at the back. He hit a button on the laptop. A crackle came through the speakers, followed by Charles's voice. Once the device records him ranting, we'll have everything we need to paint him unstable. The board will eat it up. The crowd gasped. Heads swiveled toward Charles. He froze. And Lydia's his way in. She gives the gift. He talks like a fool. We bury him with his own words. And if he doesn't talk? A second voice asked. He will, Charles sneered on the recording. He always does. He can't help himself. Recognize that voice? I asked, staring at him. Charles forced a laugh. This is fake. Some deep fake garbage he cooked up. I held up a thick folder. Pulled from your office server, time-stamped, witnessed, and before you claim hacking. These were retrieved through a legal subpoena, served 3 weeks ago. You just didn't read the fine print, a board member stood. Charles, is that your voice? He said nothing. His jaw clenched. I walked slowly to the podium's center. But that's not all. You all remember the lovely Father's Day gesture? Gasps followed as I reached into my jacket and pulled out the small, wrapped box. The same blue ribbon, the same soft paper. Lydia's face went pale. Charles wanted a recording, I said. He got one. Just not the one he expected. I peeled the ribbon. The microphone picked up every soft rip of the paper. The room leaned forward like a single body. I opened the box and lifted the velvet lining, revealing the small, blinking recorder. This, I said, holding it up to the light, was planted in my home. It's been active since the day it arrived. The plan was simple. Provoke me into talking, twist my words, destroy my credibility. The room buzzed with whispers. Charles snapped. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I do, I said. You just admitted it. His face twisted. No, I mean... The microphone in his hand caught every stutter. Board members turned to one another. Journalists scribbled. The gala's live feed kept rolling on the big screens. Lydia suddenly stood, shaking. Stop, she shouted. Enough! The room froze. All eyes turned to her. She stepped forward, voice trembling. Yes, I gave him the gift, but I didn't want to. Charles ordered it. He told me if I didn't, he'd pull me out of the trust restructuring and make me look complicit. Charles hissed. Lydia... She ignored him, but I left something inside. A clue, a loose ribbon knot, a misaligned seam. I wanted him to find it. I didn't know how else to warn him. My chest tightened. So she had tried. Quietly. Strategically. Charles barked, You're lying. You're scared. Don't betray me. Betray you? She snapped, stepping closer to him. You used me. You used Mom. You used everyone. The board chairman rose slowly. Charles, is what we're hearing true? Charles turned, eyes darting. No, it's all manipulation. He's bitter. He wants revenge. He forged the tape. But as he spoke, the live recording on the projector was still rolling, capturing his own words from earlier. He realized it too late, his face drained of color. The chairman's voice was calm. All board members, please raise your hands to suspend Charles, immediately pending investigation. Hands went up like a wave, one by one. Lydia's included. Eleanor's trembling hand was last. The chairman turned to me. Mr. Turner, or should I say John, you've just handed us enough evidence to open a full legal review. Charles lunged toward me, face red. You think this is over? You think you can just... Security moved in. He shoved one of them, sending the mic screeching across the floor. His voice boomed through the hall. I built this company. You were nothing without me. His outburst echoed like a confession. I stared at him, steady. No, Charles. You built a house of lies. I just turned on the lights. As they dragged him from the stage, Lydia stood there, shaking but defiant. Our eyes met. Hers were a storm. Guilt, anger, relief. The crowd erupted in overlapping voices. Shock, accusations, questions. The board members huddled like startled birds. Journalists swarmed. Eleanor stayed seated, face pale, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I leaned into the microphone one last time. For 15 years, I kept quiet. I let time do the talking. But tonight, you all heard the truth for yourselves. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. I clicked the recorder off. The blinking light died, and for the first time in 15 years, the room belonged to me again. The house was quiet, in a way I hadn't heard in 15 years. Not empty, not hostile, just quiet, like the storm had finally spent itself. Charles's lawyers were already circling. The board had suspended him. Investigators were combing through every forged document, every hidden trust, every careless word he'd left on tape. He was finally where he belonged, cornered. But the real reckoning wasn't in court. It was waiting on the porch. The screen door creaked softly. Lydia stood at the edge of the steps, her hands buried in the sleeves of a simple sweater. No power suit, no boardroom mask, just my daughter, older but suddenly more like the teenager who used to sneak outside to talk to me after everyone else had gone to bed. Can I sit? She asked. Her voice was careful, almost fragile. I nodded. You don't have to ask. You helped build this porch. She smiled weakly and sat beside me. The wood groaned under our weight. For a long moment, we didn't speak. The wind brushed through the trees, Carrying the smell of cut grass and distant rain, she stared at the railing. You kept the carving. LD plus DAD, I said softly. Some things don't get erased so easily. She ran her fingers over the uneven letters. I used to sit here and trace this after you left. I told myself if I pressed hard enough, maybe you'd come back. I swallowed. I was always watching. I just couldn't step in. Not until now, she exhaled shakily. I need to say something, and I don't want you to interrupt, okay? I nodded. I was scared, she began. Back then, I thought Mom and Charles were protecting us. They said you were reckless, that if I signed, everything would be safe. And when you left, it felt like proof. Like they were right. She stared at the yard. But then the years went by, and I started to see things. Charles controlling everything. Mom fading. My name on documents I didn't even read. I was part of it, Dad, even if I didn't want to be. Her voice cracked. I became good at pretending, at following orders. But when the audit started, when the journalist questions came, I saw the walls bending, and when you came back as Mr. Turner, I knew. I didn't recognize your face, but your questions, they sounded like you. I let out a slow breath. Why didn't you say something sooner? She looked at me then, eyes glassy, guilt written all over her. Because Charles had everything on me, every signature, every deal. He made sure if he went down, I'd go with him. The only thing I could do was signal. The gift, I said quietly. She nodded. I couldn't warn you outright. He was listening to everything, but I loosened the ribbon, left the lining a little off. Mom's call was real, too. She figured it out, but she didn't dare say more. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of years hung between us, thick and heavy. I could hear the old night sounds, the distant chirp of crickets, the faint hum of a neighbor's TV. It was like stepping into a photograph and realizing you'd never really left. I turned toward her. I spent 15 years building a life outside this house. Quiet, patient. I thought that was strength. But watching you on that stage, hearing you finally tell the truth, that was strength I didn't expect. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I wasn't blind. Just trapped. I reached over and took her hand. Her grip was cold but steady. Lydia, forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to stop bleeding from the same wound. She let out a trembling laugh. You always talk like that. Old habits. The porch door creaked again. Eleanor stood in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl, watching us. Her eyes were sunken, red from crying, but not the performative tears she used to show the board. These were quiet, real. She didn't come closer. She didn't need to. The look on her face said everything she hadn't dared say for years. I'm sorry. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I didn't feel rage. I felt something quieter, sadness, and acceptance. Lydia noticed and whispered, She's been different since the gala. She doesn't talk much, just watches. She watched for 15 years, I said softly. Maybe now she'll finally see. The night settled around us like a heavy coat. Lydia leaned back on her hands, staring up at the sky. What happens now? Charles faces the law, I said. The board will clean house. And you decide who you are without him telling you. She nodded slowly. I resigned this morning. I raised an eyebrow. That must have hit him like a hammer. Her smile was small, but real. It felt good. I stood, feeling the boards beneath my feet. Boards I nailed in place decades ago. This house hasn't felt like mine in a long time. But I think it's time I walked back inside. Not as a ghost, not as a stranger. She stood with me. As Dad, I nodded. As Dad. Eleanor stepped aside silently as we walked through the doorway. For the first time, the house didn't feel hostile. It didn't feel stolen. It felt still. I paused in the hallway, running my hand along the wall. My voice was low but steady. I came back to prove them wrong, to take back what they stole. But somewhere along the way, I found something better. Lydia tilted her head. What? My voice, I said. The one they tried to erase. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the porch railing where our names were carved. Inside, the house breathed again, slow, deep, alive. And for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't planning my next move. I wasn't hiding in shadows or sharpening knives. I was home.